Welcome to On With The Show, where we delve into the intriguing stories that have shaped the world of performing arts. I'm your host, Leo Sullivan. Join me as we enter a Hollywood courtroom with a case that would pit Hollywood royalty Raquel Welch against movie studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, challenging assumptions about stardom, studio power, and what happens when a woman in her 40s refuses to go quietly. So, without further ado, let's dive into the spotlight and explore the stories behind the curtain. This is On With The Show. It was the summer of 1981 when Raquel Welch formally filed suit against Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Just months earlier, she had been abruptly fired from her lead role in the movie Cannery. The studio claimed she had violated her contract. Raquel claimed they had never intended to keep her in the role at all. The lawsuit made headlines, not because lawsuits in Hollywood were rare, but because Raquel wasn't just suing for her paycheck. She was accusing one of the industry's most powerful studios of bad faith, conspiracy, and slander. In the weeks following her termination from Cannery, Raquel moved to New York. At the end of 1981 and into 1982, she starred in the Broadway production of Woman of the Year. It was a successful run, but her performance had mixed reviews. In an article by UPI from July 1982, it is stated, "Raquel Welch is no Woman of the Year, whether it's singing, dancing, acting, or even just wearing clothes. If I were pressed for a word, it would be amateurish." She was paid $25,000 a week. She also signed endorsement deals, including a food commercial and a concert tour, each worth $1 million. It took over 4 years for Raquel to finally get her day in court. The lawsuit named MGM and several related entities, including producer Michael Phillips and studio president David Begelman. The claims included breach of contract, slander, conspiracy to induce breach of contract, and breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, more commonly referred to as bad faith. Raquel's legal team, led by attorney Edward Mosk, argued that MGM had never intended to let her complete the film. Instead, the studio had used her name to secure financing and then removed her as soon as that was achieved, replacing her with Deborah Winger, who had quietly been contacted before Raquel was let go. The amount sought in damages was $24 million, over $80 million in today's money. The case raised immediate legal questions. First, there was the issue of Raquel's contract. She hadn't signed it as an individual. The deal was between MGM and Raquel Welch Productions Incorporated. The studio's lawyers argued that Raquel, as an individual, had no standing to sue for breach. But the court disagreed. Raquel had signed the contract both as president of her company and in her personal capacity. Her name and likeness were central to the deal. She had obligations under the contract, and so did MGM. The second issue was about conspiracy. Could MGM and its own employees conspire with each other? Legally, a corporation can't conspire with itself. But the court found that Phillips, the producer, had acted not solely in the studio's interest, but also out of concern for his own position. That opened the door to a conspiracy claim. Then came the more sensitive accusation: slander. Shortly after Raquel's dismissal, an article appeared in Rolling Stone magazine where MGM president David Begelman was quoted as saying, "We had a general feeling she had not lived up to her contract. The producer gave her appropriate directions and she failed to obey." It was the kind of comment that, on the face, might seem vague, but in legal terms, it was potentially damaging. Raquel's team argued that the statement implied factual wrongdoing, that she had failed to meet her contractual obligations, when, in fact, there was evidence she had complied. The jury would ultimately be asked to decide whether Begelman's comment was an opinion or an assertion of fact. During the trial, the courtroom became a stage of its own. MGM painted Raquel as temperamental and difficult, an actress who refused to compromise and created conflict on set. Their attorney described her as someone who, if she could not have her own way, she refused to talk to the producer and director. Raquel's team responded by framing the case as a matter of professional rights and corporate misuse of power. Raquel testified that she had never caused delays, had always complied with the production schedule, and had only done makeup at home with the studio's approval. She said her termination had little to do with logistics and everything to do with internal politics. In his closing argument, Edward Moss called it a case of arrogant corporate executives acting without regard for human beings. The jury sided with Welch. They found in her favour on breach of contract, slander, conspiracy, and bad faith. David Ward, the director, was exonerated, but MGM, Begelman, and Phillips were held liable. Welch was awarded $2 million in compensatory damages and over $8 million in punitive damages. That included $400,000 for lost contract benefits, $1 million for lost future income, $750,000 for reputational damage, $300,000 for slander, and nearly $4 million in punitive damages from MGM alone. It was a resounding verdict. Raquel raised her arms and let out a gasp of joy as the Superior Court jury's verdict was read after 4 weeks of testimony and 3 days of deliberations. In a statement, she said, "I have no sour grapes against Hollywood or movie producers in general, but it's important to stand up for yourself when you feel you've been wronged." But the case wasn't over. MGM appealed. In the appeal, MGM challenged almost every aspect of the original ruling. They argued that there was no legal basis for conspiracy, that Raquel couldn't sue as an individual, that the slander judgment was flawed, and that the punitive damages were excessive. The appeals court upheld the jury's verdict. The court found that there was sufficient evidence to support the finding of conspiracy, particularly in light of MGM's secret negotiations with Deborah Winger before Raquel had been dismissed. The court also ruled that Begelman's statements to Rolling Stone could reasonably be interpreted as factual and defamatory. And it confirmed that the damages awarded were not excessive under the law. The court noted that Raquel's reputation had been harmed. After Cannery Row, she stopped receiving meaningful film offers. The only scripts she received were, in her words, to play a Nazi or a vampire. Raquel had won the case, but at a cost. Her career didn't stop, but it did shift. Before Cannery Row, Raquel had made 6 films in 7 years, earning between $150,000 and $350,000 per role. By the mid-1980s, those same types of roles were commanding $2 to $5 million, and Raquel wasn't even being considered for any of them. Later, she found success in the health and beauty world. A best-selling book, followed by a popular workout video, allowed her to reinvent herself as a lifestyle figure. None of these pursuits prevented her from acting again. She remained camera-ready, business-savvy, and well-known. But the film roles never returned. In industry circles, it became widely assumed that Raquel had been fired for failing to show up on set, and when she did, she was late and difficult. It didn't matter that the court found otherwise. When Cannery Row was released, with Deborah Winger in the lead, the reviews weren't good, although the distance of time has since been more sympathetic. In 1981, Variety wrote, "Maybe Raquel Welch will have the last laugh after all." The film lost millions. MGM made less from the project than Raquel did from her legal victory. The case didn't set a legal precedent, but it did demonstrate something rare: an actor successfully suing a studio, not just for breach of contract, but for bad faith and reputational harm, and winning. It highlighted the power imbalance that still defines much of the industry. The studio had the press, the infrastructure, and the machinery to tell its version of events. But by the time the judgment acknowledged that Raquel had been wronged, the industry had moved on without her. If you found this episode enjoyable, please follow or share.